Alina Cross had built her family's aerospace components company into a defense contractor worth billions, inheriting both the empire and the enemies that came with it. That afternoon, she'd slipped away from a shareholders' summit 2 blocks over, desperate for 30 minutes where nobody needed her signature on anything. She chose the Meridian, a quiet rooftop café tucked above the financial district, the kind of place where nobody expected to find a woman whose face had been on 4 magazine covers that year. She wore sunglasses, a plain gray coat, and no security detail. For the first time in weeks, she let herself breathe. 2 tables away sat a man in a faded canvas jacket, sleeves rolled to the elbow, forearms marked with the kind of scars that came from real work, not gyms. Across from him, a girl of about 7 colored quietly in a notebook, an old stuffed fox propped beside her plate, one ear stitched crookedly where it had clearly been repaired more than once. He smiled every time she looked up to show him a drawing, an easy, tired warmth in his face. Alina found herself watching them longer than she meant to. She'd built an empire, and yet something about that small, ordinary happiness looked like it weighed more than anything in her boardroom. Her phone buzzed once against the table. A single line lit the screen, no name attached, encrypted. They found the summit, get out now. The warmth drained from her face in an instant, her pulse spiked. She lifted her eyes slowly toward the street below, and there they were, a black sedan sliding to the curb, then a second behind it. 3 men stepped out, jackets too heavy for the weather, moving without hurry, without conversation. They didn't glance at the menu board out front. They didn't check their phones. They simply spread, one toward the cafe's front entrance, one circling toward the service alley, the last lingering by the corner, pretending to read a newspaper while his eyes tracked every window. Alina recognized the pattern instantly. She'd seen it before. 18 months of buyout threats after she refused to sell her father's defense contracts, 2 break-ins at her townhouse, 1 car that had followed her for 6 blocks before vanishing. And now, without her security detail, they'd finally found the gap. The bell over the door chimed. The first man stepped inside, ordered a coffee he had no intention of drinking, and let his eyes drift slowly across every table, every face, every exit. Alina lowered her head over her menu, her chest tightening. There was nowhere left to run. That was when the man in the canvas jacket rose to refill his daughter's water glass and passed close enough to Alina's table that she could speak without being seen. "They're here for me," she whispered, barely a breath of sound. He didn't stop walking, didn't flinch, only slowed just slightly and answered just as quietly. "How many?" "3. Maybe more outside." "Which one's watching the door?" "The one by the counter." "Coffee he's not drinking." 15 seconds passed. Alina would remember counting every one of them later. The strange, suspended stillness of a man deciding something enormous while pretending to check on a water pitcher. Then he crouched beside his daughter. "Hey, Ivy," she looked up immediately mid-drawing. "Remember the game we practiced? If I say asterisk go find the kitchen, what do you do?" "I go to the hallway by the kitchen and I wait for you," she recited instantly, like a line she'd said 100 times before. "And if someone else comes first, I stay hidden until it's you." He kissed the top of her head. "Good girl." There was no fear in the child's eyes, no confusion. Only the calm obedience of a drill she'd clearly rehearsed long before that afternoon. Alina stared, her fear momentarily replaced by something else, disbelief. This wasn't how fathers reacted to danger. This was how someone trained reacted. The man stood and something in him changed the instant he did. His shoulders squared, his breathing slowed. His eyes moved across the room in smooth, deliberate arcs. The door, the kitchen pass-through, the fire exit sign, the reflection in the espresso machine's chrome casing. Every chair that could become cover, every object within reach that could become a weapon. He wasn't afraid, he was cataloging. By the counter, the first man's hand drifted toward his jacket. The father saw it before anyone else in the room did. Without looking directly at him, he walked calmly toward the elderly server wiping down the pastry case. "Ma'am," he said, low and even. "I need you to tell everyone there's a gas smell coming from the kitchen, right now." She blinked. "What? There isn't time to explain, please." Something in his voice left no room for doubt. She straightened, rang the small service bell, and raised her voice. "Excuse me, everyone, we're smelling gas near the kitchen. Please move calmly toward the back exit." Chairs scraped. Customers rose, confused but compliant, funneling toward the rear hallway. The man by the counter's expression hardened as he watched his ambush unraveling in real time. His hand finished its motion, and a pistol came free from beneath his jacket. "Sit back down," he barked. The father stepped calmly into the space between him and the retreating customers. Looking for someone? Move. I don't think I will. Alina felt something cold crawl up her spine. This wasn't bravery. This was a man who had done this before. The gunman raised the weapon fully. Screams erupted as tables overturned in the scramble. In the chaos, the father reached into his jacket, pulled a small worn identification card, and flashed it toward Alina for exactly 1 second before it vanished again. She caught the insignia. Her stomach dropped. She knew exactly what that symbol meant. She'd seen it once before, on a folder her father had kept locked in his private safe, listing operatives whose service records had been sealed for national security. Men who, on paper, did not exist. The quiet single father wasn't a stranger who happened to be having lunch. He was one of them, and the men outside had just made the worst mistake of their lives. The gunman's finger tightened on the trigger and the father moved. It wasn't fast in the way movies made it look. It was faster than that and stripped of anything unnecessary. He stepped off the line of fire, caught the gunman's wrist, and redirected the barrel skyward as the shot buried itself harmlessly in the ceiling tile. Before the man could recover, he twisted the weapon free, disarmed it with a practiced flick, and drove him back into a support column hard enough to end the fight in one motion. "Kitchen, go now," he called toward the server, who hustled the last of the customers through the back hallway. Ivy slipped along with them exactly as instructed, never looking back, the fox tucked tight under her arm. Outside, the two remaining men heard the gunshot and burst through both entrances at once. One spotted Alina crouched behind an overturned table. "There she is." The father grabbed a heavy wooden table and flipped it onto its side in one motion, creating instant cover. "Stay down," he told her. She stared at him, breath ragged. "Who asterisk are you?" He didn't look away from the entrances. "It doesn't matter right now." The second gunman opened fire, splintering wood and shattering glass along the front windows, but the father waited motionless. For the half-second pause every shooter eventually took while reloading. The moment it came, he moved, closing the distance in 3 strides, disarming the man before he could finish the reload, and using the same motion to sweep his legs out from under him. The third attacker turned to flee toward the alley exit, only to find it already blocked by 2 responding officers who'd arrived on a routine patrol call and recognized the chaos for what it was. Within seconds, all 3 men were restrained, weapons cleared, hands zip-tied. Silence fell over the wrecked café. Broken glass littered the floor. Overturned chairs lay scattered between shaking, wide-eyed customers slowly realizing they were alive because one quiet father had refused to freeze. Alina rose on unsteady legs and crossed to where he knelt, checking on Ivy, who had crept back out from the hallway the moment the noise stopped. The girl threw her arms around his neck. "I knew you'd come get me," she whispered. "I always will," he answered softly, brushing dust from her hair. Alina's voice trembled as she found him. "You were supposed to be an ordinary customer having lunch." He offered a tired, faint smile. "I try to be. That insignia," she said. "My father kept a file on operatives like you. People who were supposedly dead," he finished quietly. "Officially, yes. After my wife passed, I asked to be listed that way. I didn't want my daughter growing up with people from my old life still looking for me. I wanted her to have a father, not a target." Alina looked at him for a long moment, something shifting behind her eyes. "You could have stayed hidden, let security handle it. Let me deal with the consequences alone." "Your daughter wasn't in that hallway," he said simply. "Mine was." It wasn't an answer about heroism. It was an answer about fatherhood, and somehow that made it land harder. A week later, investigators traced the men back to the same network that had been pressuring Alina's company for over a year, and formal charges followed swiftly. Reporters descended on the story almost immediately, eager to name the mysterious man who'd stopped an assassination attempt in broad daylight. He declined every interview, every camera, every offer of a reward, choosing instead to walk his daughter to school the following Monday exactly as he always had. Before leaving the precinct that night, Alina pressed a card into his hand. "If you ever need anything, anything at all, call me." He slipped it into his jacket pocket without a word, then took his daughter's hand and walked out into the evening light. Halfway down the block, Ivy looked up at him. "Daddy, are you like a superhero?" He squeezed her hand and smiled. "No, sweetheart, superheroes want everyone to know their name. Good fathers just want their kids to make it home." Alina watched them disappear around the corner, and for the first time in years, she felt something settle in her chest that had nothing to do with quarterly earnings or boardroom politics. She had spent her whole career believing that power announced itself through title, through wealth, through the number of people who feared you. But the strongest person in that cafe that afternoon had worn a faded jacket, said almost nothing, and asked for nothing in return. And she understood, walking back toward a summit that suddenly felt very small, that the quietest people in the room are often the ones capable of the loudest kind of courage, and the truest strength never needs to be seen to be real.